Thank you very much, Adelaida. You continued on the theme of culture communication. I want to come back to the very first panel we had yesterday, which helped us to think through where are we with agriculture, nutrition, health, where are we headed? And I asked Per, we are now 2 days later. Are we rethinking in these 2 days?
Are we doing what? Rethinking?
Rethinking? Has your thinking changed?
My thinking has changed, but I suffer from information overload. I'm so glad that this conference is close to being over because I'm developing a headache. And I don't want Ricardo to have any more sleepless nights, although it doesn't seem to slow him down. Rajul doesn't know what I'm going to say now, but I'm going to say it anyway. This has been a wonderful conference. It's still going on, but it's almost over. And I want to congratulate you, Schengen, Klaus, and everybody from within and outside IFPRI who's contributed to making this a success. Please join me in recognizing them.
Per, I wasn't asking for compliments, I'm asking for rethinking.
That's why I didn't tell you I was going to say this, because then you wouldn't have given me the floor. I think what we need to do now is to convert our ideas into action. Yes, I agree, we need a lot more research. I'm a researcher. We're never going to run out of things we can research. There will always be knowledge gaps, and we've identified a number of them. The data are lousy, I agree with you, Prabhu. We need to improve the data material. But if that's all we do, we're going to lose some momentum. We have a tremendous momentum, and by we, I'm talking about the community under the leadership of IFPRI and a number of development organizations who are into this as well. We must not lose this momentum, and that means that while we are doing research, filling knowledge gaps, improving the data, we must also promote action. And we must do this jointly with the development organizations and anybody else who wants to participate, certainly governments. We must work at the strategic level as well as at the project design and implementation level. We have a lot to say. We have focused a lot on what we don't know, but the fact is that there are so many ideas that have come out during the last 3 days that can now be packaged in simplified messages, not to be confused with simplistic messages, simplified messages identifying the key pathways and making those messages available to the people who can make a difference, who can actually turn this around for the benefit of the mothers and the children and the fathers and everybody that we've been talking about. Why am I worried about losing momentum? Because I predict that 2 to 3 years from now, we're going to have very low food prices, because we're going to have bumper harvests in India this year. We're going to have bumper harvests in China next year. China is making huge investments in agricultural development. That's going to pay off. Farmers respond to the higher prices. We're going to have a tremendous increase in food production over the next 2 to 3 years. Yes, lots of fluctuations, but on the trend line is going to be, I think, and then of course compassion sets in and said, oh well, that was that. We're now in good shape, and we will continue to ignore the problems. So now is the time to act, and I really appreciate that you've drawn attention to this problem, and I wish you all the best, and I'll do whatever I can to support you. Thank you.
Thank you. So I come back to the panel. Diane, we heard about culture, we heard about communication, we heard about not losing momentum. I was struck by one of the points you made, among the 3 points you made, about basically to go back to the investments we are currently making and how can we make them, I put it in my own words, how to make them more nutrition friendly, what we are currently doing, let alone with new. Where would you see some of these rethinking on this part of momentum, not wanting to lose momentum? Do you see a potential there in terms of rethinking these investments viably? And what else would you like to say?
Absolutely. We were talking over the last few days, there has been significant investment made through L'Aquila in food security and agriculture. There also has been significant investment made through the Muskoka Initiative on maternal, newborn, and child health. Are we making sure that all of these investments are taking into consideration their impact on nutrition? And I think that it is simple enough. We need to look at it. I think we know how to do it. I really like Pierre's discussion when he said we need to convert our thinking into actions. And I agree. There's a lot we need to know, but I agree that there are some proven interventions. We've heard over the last few days micronutrient supplementation, biofortification of staples. We've heard about homestead food production. So we know that there are some things that work that we can do more of. And I think sometimes they are complex issues, but we cannot be paralyzed by that, otherwise we won't go anywhere. So I think we need to maybe unpack a little bit and make progress where we can. And the last thing I would say is maybe we need to try to find incentives for people across sectors to work better together. What's the value added if I'm an agriculture expert to go and link with the health people? I heard a lot people saying, well, there's not a lot of health experts, at the conference. Well, maybe the agricultural experts here need to go to the next health conference and really start talking the same language.
Thank you very much. Prabhu, coming back to your obsession with data, and data does take a long time, and Pierre's point of momentum now, not wanting to lose it. What do we do in the interim?
Certainly don't want you to stop the momentum. I think we know a lot of things that we can just do. We know aflatoxin is a serious problem. Let's figure out how to solve that aflatoxin problem rather than trying to spend a lot of money and effort right now to prove that aflatoxin is a serious problem, right? So this is the type of thing that I'm talking about. We can keep working, but as we work, put in place some serious household data systems. We are proud to be supporting the LSMS surveys of the World Bank, where they've now put in a serious agriculture module in it. So for the very first time, we'll be able to trace what happens to agriculture productivity and how it affects all the welfare indicators. And that's going to take a few more years, but in the meantime, we know agriculture plays an important role, and we're already investing a lot in that. So let's keep doing that. Sometimes I worry when donors ask for a lot of impacts data that doesn't exist. So as a donor, let me say that we have to be a little bit more pragmatic on that. Can I make one comment on cross-cultural issues, which is, again, something I've been thinking about a lot in the last couple of days. The whole issue of not cross-cultural, cross-sectoral. I didn't mean to go into culture right now. Cross-sectoral issues. It reminds me of all this discussion we have about multidisciplinarity, which is pretty similar type of discussion. Problems are multidisciplinary, and we all agree on that. But the way we solve a problem which crosses disciplines, which doesn't respect disciplines, is not by losing our disciplinary strength. It's bringing our disciplinary strength to the problem, and a group of us bringing our disciplinary strength to the problem and saying, how do we contribute our disciplines to address that problem? And so as we talk about multi-sectoral work, we should not lose the fact that there is strength in the sectoral knowledge, but we should recognize that other sectors have knowledge which contributes to addressing that problem, and that we need to work together. That's the point I'd like to make.
Ricardo, I want to ask you a question, though.
Yeah.
I do want to ask you a question, or actually two of them, coming back to the points you made on the what if, and coming back to your point on social media. So take it one step further. We have a lot of new social media, a lot of power social media. How do you see that transforming this rethinking? And I want to come back one moment. You had a lot of what ifs, I do too. The right to food. How do you see that evolving, and what impact would that demand on the right to food have to this rethinking?
I think the right to food is the best example of where we need to go, because it's not what we declare, what we write in documents, what we convince and argue between ourselves. Is how the right to food becomes a political issue and people demand it. And how do we get politicians to react to this? How many of us have talked to politicians in the last year? How many have talked across disciplines? Very few. In fact, if you go to Bolivia, I was there 2 weeks ago, in fact, the minister was going to come, the president of Bolivia has moved even beyond the malnutrition zero. He has rescued from the indigenous tradition the concept of living well, not living better, because, and he's made the point in the document, living better means that some live better than others. And this is the community raising their standard and living well, in harmony with the environment, in harmony with animals, in harmony with, in their case, just as we have tea, they have coca leaves. They don't purify it and shoot it in as a drug. And they say, why are they banning coca as opposed to tea or coffee? Coca as a leaf has exactly the same. So just giving you this as a sense of what cultures and how this food and nutrition get incorporated. In that same setting, they now have created with local foods, and they've rescued from the Andean foods, winning foods. For example, we were visiting, and they said they only eat corn. No, they ate corn, they had fava beans, they had chickpeas. They toasted them, and in fact, that was a meal. It had all the fiber, and the potato eaten with the skin provides as much vitamin C as half an orange. So if you eat 2 potatoes, you don't need oranges. The Japanese had brought tents so that they would grow citrus fruits in the high in the Andes. In fact, they don't need that, and they have no problem with scurvy because they eat the potatoes as they eat them. So I'm putting this as examples of we need to get closer to the people. We need to get closer to what people are really eating. We as nutritionists need to learn from dietary patterns, not from individual nutrients. We've already done that. It won Nobel Prizes for 50 years. Every few years there was a Nobel Prize because of a new vitamin. Now the solution comes from integrating diets, dietary patterns, comes from sustainability. That's rethinking. But the rethinking doesn't come from the disciplines of the biochemistry and all of that. It comes from learning from people and dietary patterns. I would just want to make one what if. If we look at health, especially, I'm a medic, I see patients still. Medicine is built around cures. It's not built around prevention. In fact, half of the health expenditure in industrialized countries happens in the last week of life. Half of the health expenditure is what medicine offers as cure for people who are ready to die. Okay? So that part of health is obviously in another paradigm. We need to talk to the part of health, which is let's invest at least the same amount in the first 1,000 days of life. Let's invest in nutrition and food as a basic human need. Maybe rubber can be treated as a commodity, but we need to start to make a distinction. Food that is going to be supplying human beings for a basic need cannot be in the same marketplace and be fluctuating the way it is. And definitely, we know what to do with it. I'm not an expert, but in all sorts of commodities, they build buffers, they build whatever things to keep prices from fluctuating the way it does. In all sorts of societies, they've kept stores of grains to actually go through the lean times. So we just went through a year and a half of rescuing with $1 trillion the banking system. Can't we have an economic buffer so that we don't have these fluctuations? I'm sure that one of the economists in this room can tell us that this is doable. There's no reason. That's why I think rethinking means looking at the values behind the science, the values behind our statements, the science behind our judgments, the values behind the reality. That's what I'm saying. You first have to declare that as we have it, we cannot solve it. It needs to be rethought, but with a different set of values and a different means. And that's I think, a very important attitude. It's not only knowledge-based, but it's something that we need to really take a position before we leave. Because if we're going to go this way, we're going to meet 5 years from now, and we have made very little progress.
Thank you very much.